All right, guys, so now that we have our MLab MongoDB implementation, we're going to start to build our backend. So first thing we'll do is create a folder for our application. I'm going to put mine right on my desktop, and I'm going to call it Dev Connector. And I'm going to open this with VS Code, okay? And of course, you can use whatever text editor you want, whatever terminal you want. I'll be using the integrated terminal, so I'm going to hit Control or Command and then backtick, which will pop open my integrated terminal here. All right, now as with any Node.js application, first thing we want to do is run npm init, and that will create, it's going to ask us some questions. It'll ask the package name, the version, that's fine. Description, we'll say social network for developers. And the entry point, I'm going to use server.js. Okay, anytime I build a full stack app, I usually like to use server.js as the entry point. We'll go through all this. You could put your own name if you want, and I'll say MIT for the license, and that will create a package.json file. Okay, which is just a manifest, has all that information. It'll also hold our dependencies. So let's go ahead and install some dependencies. Now, we're going to be using quite a few dependencies. I'm going to install the main ones now. There might be 2 or 3 smaller things later that we'll add, but let's install the main dependencies. So I'm going to say npm I, or you can do install, and let's install Express, which is our main framework. Let's install Mongoose, which is used to connect and interact with MongoDB. Let's install Passport, which is used for authentication. We're going to be using JSON Web Tokens, so we also want to install Passport-JWT, and then we also want to install JSON Web Token, which is used to actually generate the token. We're also going to want Body Parser, because we want to be able to take in data through our requests and do what we want with it. Let's see, we also want bcrypt, and it's actually going to be bcrypt.js. Make sure you use the JS version. I've always had issues using just bcrypt, and I think that's good for now. Let's also install validator, because we will be doing some validations later. Whoops, it's hard to talk and type at the same time. And I think that's it. So let's go ahead and run that, and that should show up here in our dependencies. Now there's one dev dependency I want to install, so I'm going to say npm I, and I'm going to do -d. You can also do --save-dev, because we want this as a dev dependency, and it's going to be nodemon. And what this does is it'll constantly watch our Node application, and when we make changes, it'll update instead of us having to actually go and manually restart it every time. So we would definitely want to install that as a dev dependency. And that should show up here in a minute. All right, so there it is. And you may have some later versions depending on when you're watching this. So now that that's all set, we have our main dependencies. Let's create our server.js file. This is our entry point file. And we're going to bring in some stuff here. So let's bring in Express. Actually, let's just bring in what we need for now, which is just Express. And then we're going to initialize a variable called app to Express. All right, and we're going to want to create just a simple route to just to get something up and running. So we're going to do app.get. We will be putting our routes in different files using the Express router, but for now, I'm just going to do a route to /, which is just basically the home page, and we'll put in a call. You can either do a callback like this if you want, but we're going to try to stick to ES 2015 or ES6 and use an arrow function. So we're going to go like that. Okay. Actually, we don't even need these curly braces, because all we're doing is console.log. Not console log, we're going to res.send something, and we'll just say hello. Okay, and this is going to take in two parameters. It's going to take in a request and response object. So that's our route, just to test out. Now we need to actually be able to run the server, but before we do that, I'm going to create a variable called port, and I want this to run on port 5000, but we will be deploying to Heroku, and when you deploy to Heroku, you want to set it to process.env, and we want to do .port like that, or locally we want to run it on port 5000. Okay, we might as well just get that out of the way now, and then we can do app.listen, and we want to pass in the port we want to listen, which is that variable, and then we can put a callback here or an arrow function, and I'm just going to do a console log, and we're just going to put in some backticks here. We're going to use ES6 template literal so that we can put a variable inside here with the string, and we're just going to say server running on port, and then the variable syntax, which I'm sure a lot of you guys know, is like this. Okay, so it'll just output whatever this port is right here, and this should actually run our server, just these few lines of code. So let's save this. Let's go down here and let's run node server. Okay, server running on port 5000. So as most of you probably know, we're calling node and then the file name. You could do server.js, but you don't need the JS. So let's open up our browser and let's go to localhost port 5000, and we get hello. Okay, and we're getting hello because that's what we put. That's what we put to do when we visit this route, which is the home page. All right, so now that we have a server up and running, before we go, there's one more thing I want to do, and that's to add a script, because right now, actually what I'll do is snap this over here and this over here, and let's just make that bigger, because right now if I were to, let's say, add an exclamation here and save and reload, we don't see that change. So what we want to do is we want to use nodemon. What we could do, I'm going to stop this with Control C. We could do nodemon and then the file name, but I'm actually going to add an npm script to run our server. So let's go back to package.json, and under here where it says scripts, we actually don't need this test script. We're first going to do start. So npm start will just run node server, so it'll basically just run what we just did. Let's actually put the extension as well, but again, we'll have to keep reloading the server when we make a change. So what else? The other thing I'm going to do is add a script called server, and this will actually run nodemon. Oops, we need to put this in quotes. This will run nodemon server.js. Okay, so if we save this, if we run npm start, that'll run the server just like we just did, but again, we'll have to keep updating it. So I'm gonna get out of that with Control C, and instead we're gonna do npm run server. And what that does is it has nodemon run the server, so that if we were to change something, like let's say change this to hello world and save and then reload, you'll see that we didn't have to go and update, it just did it by itself. Okay, so you definitely want to use something like nodemon when developing Node.js. Alright guys, now that we have a server that is up and running, it doesn't do anything but say hello world, but at least it is running. In the next video, we're going to start to set up Mongoose so that we can connect to MongoDB, and we'll also create our routes, because we don't want to have all of our routes in this file. What we'll do is have a folder called routes, and then we'll have a folder called API, and that's where we'll have, for instance, our users routes, our profile routes, and our post routes. All right, so I will see you in the next video.